Thank you very much. And let me begin by congratulating the executive for your recent election and to say how pleased my government is to work with you, the media. I've been a fellow traveler for quite a long time, and by virtue of my training as a journalist, I remember the early days when I did my internship in GBC, and Madam Afeni Dazi was the news editor. And I worked in the newsroom. That is when I practicalized my skill in story writing and all that. Our lecturer, Professor Karkari, was the one who taught us journalism, and I did my internship in GBC. Others were attached to Graphic, Ghanaian Times, and all the other news organizations. But in later years, I was to find myself on the other side, having entered politics and appointed as Deputy Minister of Communications by virtue of my training. And so it was a very interesting time. Comrade Kwesi Pratt, Kweku Bakun, and all of them had been in the fight for media freedom. They had been arrested and jailed several times. And eventually the 1992 Constitution had been written. And so the early years of opening up the media space, I got involved in that when I came into government in 1997. And by then, the Radio Eye issues and things had all taken place, Tarzan and all the escapades. At the time I came in, things had settled down a bit, but people were still getting used to the new regime. Joy FM was there, Gold was there, Peace FM and Co. had not yet come on stream. Yes, and these were more independent media, and their reporting could be quite uncomfortable. And so as Minister of Communications, first Deputy Minister and then Minister, I really had a hard time, containing government communications. But it was a good experience. I constantly had to go on programs to try and explain what government's position was. And it was not easy with the kind of boss I had. I mean, Flight After Rawlings, he was very unorthodox. And so sometimes he would go and say something, and I have to crack my head and say, now how am I going to explain this to But somehow we managed to get through with it. And the media has come a long way since then. And I believe that the major catalyst for this has been the 1992 Constitution. It's been one of our most progressive constitutions in the history of Ghana, especially the inclusion of Chapter 12, specifically on the media, indicating media freedoms and what needed to be done to protect the media. And for the first time, licensing was taken away, so anybody could establish a media house without the kind of restriction that used to exist before. And so we've come a long way since then. But since then, a lot of things have changed. And one of the major changes in the media landscape is technology and the new media. And so we don't have traditional media as we knew it. In terms of media houses, you either had a newspaper publishing organization or you had a broadcasting organization. The media has become a bit decentralized, and because anybody who has a phone and a camera can report news to the public. And it means that communications is dealing with a wider range of people, not only traditional, well-organized media houses, but also individuals, especially the new group called bloggers, who go to events with journalists and vie for positions with them to get the best shots and the best stories. And they just go with their phone, edit, and then they put the news out. So the media landscape has changed, and the sources of information has changed. And in many cases, it is those people who are setting the agenda, because for most of our stations in the morning, they're taking a lot of news from what 1957 covered, or what GH something something covered, and they have all these their little inscriptions they put on their videos, and that drives the discussion in the morning. So they become a very important part of that segment, but are unregulated. And so sometimes they go to the extreme. The language is filthy. I mean, they can just, go to town, either insulting somebody or sometimes on the limits of hate speech. Yeah, and these are things that in the whole world, people are beginning to look at and say, how can we regulate hate speech? How can we regulate, extreme foul language, And so it's just an issue I'm raising so that all of us can begin to think about it. And the point is, would we classify them in the typical sense of journalists? I mean, those bloggers, are they typically journalists? Those are all questions that must agitate our minds. It has been, like the president said, we've seen a consistent decline in our international rankings, and that is an issue of concern for us. And part of it is because of issues to do with harassment of journalists, and even the unfortunate murder of Ahmed Swali, which caught international attention. And I think that since then, other incidents that have occurred have, diminished our ranking. And so we need to find a way of, one, ensuring that people, when they do that kind of thing, face sanctions or are punished. Because once there's no deterrent, they continue to do it. Or aside from that, to educate and create awareness that journalists are not enemies. They are reporting something that is happening. And so they must be given a free leverage to be able to do their reporting. Many times when I go to a function and I'm seated, I normally look at the way the journalists are being handled. And you find that there are some security personnel who just have a knack for harassing journalists. I mean, they are not harming anybody. They are standing, they are filming. Then somebody comes, you can't stand there, move, And I said, what have they done? So sometimes I have to shout and say, leave them, let them do their job, And so I think that we need to create awareness in the minds of these people. Some of them are police officers, some are military officers, some are national security, and especially national security, They don't have training to understand that, journalists are doing their work. You have the job of protecting the VIP or whatever. The journalists too have their work of reporting, what they doing their job and reporting what is going on there. And so we must find a way, and I told President that I'll want, Felix and the ministers of security agencies to create a certain forum where the Journalists Association and these security agencies can interact so that it sends a message to them that, look, journalists are not your enemies. They are there to do their legitimate job of informing the people, and so they are not subject to harassment. With regards to the state-owned media, they are caught up in what I described as the changing media. So because the landscape has changed and people get their information from more sources than before, it means that people are reading fewer newspapers. people are watching less of the traditional media and getting a lot of their information from short videos and bloggers and other things. And so it is not enough to just retool them. It will be important to retool them, but also see how they can enhance their production so that they continue to remain relevant. We can take best practices from abroad, from New York Times and Financial Times and all of that. I mean, they themselves have seen a drop in the actual purchase of hard copies, but then they have quickly switched to online and have very effective online subscriptions. And so they tease you with a very interesting story. And then when you open, you read a bit of it, then it stops. And then it says subscribe. Meanwhile, the story is interesting. And you want to know exactly what is there. So then you can just press subscribe. Then it says, oh, 1 month trial. Pay this, you know. And so if you pay, then you become a subscriber. And then they keep sending you notifications and all that about new stories that are coming. So we need to adopt some of those practices. Graphic has a good online system, and I think that we can improve it. And we should follow suit with, you know, Ghanaian Times and all of them, so that we are taking the media to the digital age. But like I said, there's still a role for state-owned media, and we must protect the state. Some people say we should divest all of them and make them private, but I think that public broadcasting is not always commercial and profit-making. Yeah, I mean, who will do the local language education if GBC were not there? I mean, nobody who has a private station wants to do adult education in Ewe and adult education in Dagbani and things like that. It's GBC that will do it. But it's also important because there's a segment of the population who watch it avidly because it educates them on a lot of things. But I think we should also improve the programming so that it makes it more exciting and all that. People now want more illustration. And so just having people sitting there for 1 hour and talking and discussing something can get boring. They will tune off. But if they are discussing and you're showing literally what they are talking about, and this, it makes the program more interesting. So that's one of the things that we need to look at. Elections come with a lot of emotive feelings. And sometimes when people get very emotive, they can act very irrationally. And like you said, it's not only innocent bystanders and political activists who have been caught up in electoral violence. Journalists have also been caught up in electoral violence. I asked the IGP in the early days when I assumed the presidency to investigate the violence in 2020 and 2024. I wish to inform you that last week I received the investigative report on the two incidents, and they've detailed and cataloged everybody who was affected by the violence and what the circumstances were that led to the violence. We've handed it over to the Attorney General, so the Attorney General is going to go through, and if there's the need to hold some people culpable and bring them to book, the Attorney General will do that. But in addition, we have given him the terms of reference to look at what adequate compensation would be for people who have been the victims of violence, including those who died. Their families are still there, and then those who were, some have been injured and are living with injury. And so what is the adequate compensation that we can give to people like that? And so once that is done, I'm sure that if there were journalists involved, they would also be considered for compensation. With regards to the Media Development Fund, I mentioned to you that we're ready to resuscitate it. It was something that we initiated early, and then there was a confusion about how the fund was administered, and so a premature death. But I think that we're all more matured now, and we would put in a mechanism that makes it more transparent and easier for journalists to benefit from the fund. So I think that in next year's budget, under Government Communications Department, the fund will be activated and some money will be put in it. And what I believe is that between government and the GJA, we'll constitute a board of trustees that will indicate how the fund should be utilized. And finally, I'm surprised that you still don't have land title for the Press Center land. It's unfortunate because this land was donated more than 20 years ago. And I think that all of us were very proud and appreciated the gesture that President Kufuor did in giving the Press Center. We have had events there many times, and I've been at the Press Center to witness events and even participate in some events. So I think that the time has come for us to get the Lands Commission to process that so that in future nobody can come and take it away from you. So that in future nobody can come and take it away from you. So let's work on that, but also look at the designs and costings you've made for developing that. And I think that government will be prepared to lend you a hand in developing the structures that you want. I'm sure not only government, there are many institutions, corporate institutions out of their CSR that will be willing to chip in order to create a modern, a GJA Press Center for Ghana. Because, I mean, it's not only for your use, it is for the use of the whole nation. And so it's something that we'll encourage. So these are the few things that I'll say. But what I want to commit to you is that we're going to work together with you to make sure that we improve our rankings again in the international rankings so that Ghana resumes its pride of place as the beacon of media freedom, not only in West Africa, but in the whole of Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for those compelling words.